Has this ever happened to you? You bring out your old PlayStation 1 to play some games just like the good old days 25 years ago, and when you boot it on, you find out that the discs aren't really reading all that well. Maybe you've got to put the PlayStation on its side or even upside down in order for the disc to read properly. Maybe your FMVs are skipping all over the place. Maybe your music doesn't stream off of the disc as well as it used to, and you think to yourself, well, it used to be a lot better than that, right? Yes, it did, until it wasn't. The PlayStation 1 is an engineering feat. It's hard to believe that this was designed and released over 30 years ago now. And it's really held up well as one of the greatest game consoles of all time. I'm sticking with that. But unfortunately, as gaming hardware, as any technology involving computers gets older and older, things tend to wear down. When Sony designed this thing, what they ended up doing was they put the power supply inside of the PlayStation. And while that made it a lot more convenient to plug it in and play, they ended up putting the power supply a little too close to the sled that moves the laser that reads the CDs of the games. And that means that over time, the heat from that power supply would wear down the sled and make the laser harder to move back and forth, which means it has a harder time playing games. Which is also why when you put it on its side or upside down, the laser moves a lot more smoothly because it's not fighting against gravity like it would if you have it just straight up like it was designed to be. But let's put it bluntly, even if you had a perfectly working PlayStation, which this was not, by the way, but even if you did, the discs for this are getting more and more expensive. There's plenty of must-own, must-play games on the PlayStation that used to go for only 10 or 20 bucks a few years ago, and now we're going for 50, 75, 100, 200. It's getting a lot harder to justify getting games to play on your retro PlayStation. What if I told you that there was a way for you to take care of both problems, and that is the reason I'm making this video today? I'm here to talk about... That's the power button, hang on. I'm here to talk about the XStation. A little background about myself. I have been a video game collector for over 10 years now. I have over 1,000 games, including about 100 PlayStation 1 games, which isn't even a small fraction of the library. I think there's something like 2,000 games on the PS1 now. It's kind of insane how many games were actually put on this thing. I got this PlayStation 1 in 2017 at a retro game store along with Final Fantasy VII, which was my first time playing that game. And I was so excited because this actually came with a receipt from the person who owned it before me. They had bought it on the day that the PlayStation launched in North America. And for the next several years, this was actually a tremendous way for me to play PS1 games, and I had a lot of fun with it. But I had those issues cropping up. Over time, the discs didn't read all that well. It became a huge chore for me to sit down and actually play some PS1 games, which is when I decided to invest in this little thing. This is called the PS1, P-S-O-N-E, and this was designed as a slimmed down, cheaper version of the PlayStation, and it doesn't have the power supply inside, which means that it plays discs just fine, even if it's left in the default position. I love this thing, and it's still great to play discs on this thing when I'm not using the XStation. But at some point in 2021, I found out that the XStation exists, and what the XStation is something that I'll describe to you a little bit in the future here, but I'm still talking about my story of how I acquired it. So I had this PlayStation, which was a day one PlayStation 1 system, and I really didn't like that it had been reduced to basically sitting on my shelf collecting dust. I really wanted to make use of this thing. I wanted to play games on this thing. It seems like such a waste to have such a great system that I couldn't even play games on. So I found out about the XStation, and I decided to pack this up and ship it to a modder to get it outfitted with one. Here's a bit of a spoiler alert. I've been lying this whole time. This is not that PlayStation. I did have it, but when I shipped it off to get it modded, it got lost in the mail, and I'm still super sad about that. Not only did my PlayStation get lost in the mail, my XStation mod that I had bought for it had gotten lost in the mail as well, so that was a lot of money down the drain. And even though I went out of my way to get an identical model, this is still an SCPH 1001 model. So this is a launch model system. Unfortunately, first of all, it's been refurbished, so it's not original. And secondly, it's just not the same. There's no way that this was a model that was bought day one. I still get war flashbacks whenever I think about the XStation. Regardless, eventually I did get this PlayStation and sent it off to get modded, and this time it came back, and that was the power button again, and as you can see, it's been completely removed. The CD drive is no longer in there. Instead, we have an SD card. A 512 gigabyte micro SD card, as a matter of fact. Can you believe that most of the PlayStation 1 library is now in the palm of my hand? Heck, I can hold it on the tip of my thumb. So the XStation is what is called an ODE, an optical drive emulator. Basically, it replaces the disk drive on the PlayStation, and they make these for a lot of different systems. The Sega Saturn, the Sega CD, even the 3DO has one now. But what it does is it negates the need for you to own those CDs of the game that you want to play, and it also makes it so that you don't have to worry about the disk drive at all. Instead of loading games off of the disk, the XStation actually loads all those games as if they were on a disk, but it does it off of an SD card instead, which means that you don't have to worry about wear and tear on your disk drive because there is no disk drive. It means that the PlayStation runs a lot quieter, it has a lot less wear and tear as time goes on. The biggest thing, of course, is that you don't even need to own the games that you want to play. It's like having an EverDrive or an R4 card or something like that, but it's for a PlayStation. I've been investing in EverDrives and ODEs for my video game systems for the past several years now. Basically, now that game prices have gotten astronomical and it's really hard to justify dropping $100 for some of the games that I want but don't have yet. And it's also a good way of ensuring longevity for these systems, because this system that I bought to replace my original one was 4 parts only. It didn't work. The disk drive was completely busted. Some of the caps inside needed replaced, but you know what? It got the XStation in there, and now it runs as good as new. The XStation is also pretty cool for one other thing that may or may not apply to most people, and that is it pairs well with this. This is the Mem Card Pro. This is, for all intents and purposes, a glorified memory card that slots into the front of the PlayStation like any other memory card, like so, but instead of only holding 8 blocks, it can hold almost an infinite number of blocks. I have a 64 gigabyte micro SD card here, and that is plenty to hold tens of thousands of save files for every PlayStation game ever made, and then some. And the Mem Card Pro actually pairs with the XStation. The two communicate with each other in a really cool way, so that every time you play a game using the XStation, it creates a completely new virtual memory card on the Mem Card Pro, which for all intents and purposes means you never have to even think about memory card management. I transferred every save file I've ever had onto the Mem Card Pro, and first of all, it worked perfectly. It works just like any other memory card on the PlayStation. But it means that, again, I don't even have to think about memory on this thing. All I need to think about whenever I play a game on this PlayStation is simply, which game do I want to play? And speaking of that, let's go ahead and show a little demonstration. Record video now. Okay, we're getting into some uncharted territory here. This is my OSSC, my open source scan converter. I'm inputting the PlayStation into this using SCART. And I guess we'll see how my 4K capture card takes it. There's a sync drop, that's to be expected, because the PlayStation changes resolution so much. Perfect. Ah, you'll love to see it. So there's a sync drop because it's going from 480i to 480, or to 240p actually, but it's line doubling. Okay, it just showed up. So after you boot the PlayStation, it goes into this menu, and I believe that I actually made this my custom menu just because I liked it. But I've ended up sorting all of my games here, or all my games here. I don't actually know which side of my screen I'm going to put on this one. Okay. I've sorted all my games here into different folders depending on what the title of the game is. So I have all these different folders here. I went alphabetical, so let's just, something off the top of my head. Let's just go with Spyro, the Year of the Dragon, which I think might actually be under must play. I did not double up, so this is my list of must play games. Actually, what am I doing? I should look at this screen. So it is over here. Can you tell this was unscripted? So these are my must play PlayStation 1 games. So let's go ahead and load up Spyro Year of the Dragon. Let's go ahead and do that. Mostly because, first of all, it's just a terrific game. So you have the option to either fast load or full load. Fast loading means that you skip a few seconds of the intro of a game. Full load puts back in those few seconds for some games that have compatibility issues. In any case, loading off of the XStation is actually a lot faster than loading off of the CD. It's not going to shave years off your life or anything like that, but it's nice. I'm going to go ahead and do a full load just for the purposes of this video. Sync drop again, to be expected, at least with capturing over my capture card. So since I asked for it to do a full load, we have the entire intro sequence here, including the title and the copyright logo, and man, isn't that sound just so nostalgic? I wish that console still had boot up sounds again, but they don't. As you can see, we're loading into the game just fine. Also, if the aspect ratio is off, I apologize. I'm not going to bother fixing it in post-production, but it looks pretty good to me right now. So, we just loaded into the title screen. Let's go ahead and go into it. It's accessing the memory card. As you can see, I have my 11% file here. That was what I had played through on my old memory card. I transferred the save file to my Mem Card Pro. Actually, let me go ahead and get a quick video here. So you can see here, the screen on the Mem Card Pro actually says what the name of the game is and the code for the game, which I think is pretty cool. So it actually tells you what the game is. So let me go ahead and load into the game now. The adventure continues. That was a pretty fast load. I think I'm going to go ahead and leave that in real time just so you guys get an idea. All right, so, I mean, the game is running just fine, just like you would expect on the actual game, so I'm just going to keep running around here, but you get the idea. Like, this is playing just as good as if I was playing off of the CD, but it's playing off an SD card, which means that, like I said, I don't have to worry about hurting my disk drive. I don't have to worry about all kinds of stuff. It just works. No issue. Nothing to comment on whatsoever. It's awesome. I think that's a good demonstration. There's a lot of other videos on YouTube that go into further depth on how the XStation works, how to get it set up and all that. This video was just an overview talking about it in general. That's about as far as my knowledge on it actually goes. If you love playing PlayStation games on original hardware, but you have a failing disk drive, or you're sick and tired of how expensive the prices have gotten, then I highly recommend an XStation for you. The one and only downside that I can think of with the XStation is that you can no longer play your discs on that PlayStation because it completely removes the disk drive, basically permanently. To which for me, it's enough for me to simply have, that's the power button again. That's the third time. This isn't even the same console. That's why I have this PS1 system, is so I could still play discs whenever I want to. Plus, these things are pretty cheap. I mean, this I think you can get right now for somewhere around 20 bucks. These are not that expensive. The XStation is. Oh god, the XStation is, especially when you have to buy it twice, and ship it twice, and pay for the modding services twice. XStation. So that'll bring this video to an end. Thank you everyone so much for watching. I love my XStation, I love my PlayStation, I love retro gaming. It's so awesome to see the retro gaming community come together to find new and creative ways to play old games. That brings this video to an end. Thanks everyone for watching, and stay tuned for more.